She was the first real supermodel, and the last person who wanted to be one.
I never cared about fashion. I mean, that's how I am. I like it on other people, but I can't be bothered. I don't miss it at all.
Jean Shrimpton defined the swinging 60s. The Vogue covers, the love affair with David Bailey, the look that made an entire decade fall in love. She had everything the 1960s promised: fame, beauty, and a revolution at her feet. Then, one moment changed everything. One dress, one photograph, and the world erupted. What she wore shouldn't have mattered, but in 1965, it became a national scandal. Yet, behind those iconic photographs was someone entirely different. A shy girl from a farm, trapped in an industry that saw her as an image, not a person. A woman who felt like a prop in other people's lives, told she was the most beautiful in the world, but haunted by what she called a neurosis that could be exploited. And at the absolute peak of her career, when she was the most photographed woman alive, she made a choice that shocked everyone. So, what really happened to the woman who defined an era? And why does her disappearance remain one of fashion's most enduring mysteries? Jean Shrimpton's story didn't begin in the elite circles of London or Paris. It began on a farm in Buckinghamshire, in a world of animals and quiet rural routine. Born in 1942, her childhood was idyllic, but isolated. "I was a reserved girl," she would later admit. "I was never part of a gang, and yet I wanted to please, too." There was nothing to suggest she was destined for international acclaim. With no clear path, at 17 she enrolled in a secretarial college in London, dutifully learning to type. But her looks, what she called waifish and coltish, were impossible to ignore. One day, while dawdling at a zebra crossing, she was spotted by a film director. It was a classic Hollywood discovery moment, but it led to a dead end. The producer wasn't interested. She was left feeling, in her own words, crushed. Yet, the seed was planted. On the director's advice, she enrolled in the Lucy Clayton modeling course. Soon, the girl who grew up on a farm was appearing in catalogs. She was tall, at 5'10", but her frame was slender, her eyes were huge and melancholy, and her fringe became her signature. She was the complete opposite of the poised, aristocratic models who dominated the 1950s. Jean Shrimpton didn't look like she belonged, and that was precisely her power. Years later, she'd admit, "I never liked being photographed. I just happened to be good at it, but being good at it didn't mean it was easy." In those early days, she traveled across London on a shoestring budget, her A to Z guide becoming dilapidated from constant use. Studios were in the oddest places, and on the days she most wanted to look good, she felt she looked particularly wretched. One photographer, Larry Neal, would later recall, "You were the most gawky, awkward thing I've ever seen." She possessed a rare, almost unconscious ability in front of the lens, a quiet confidence that photographers were desperate to capture. But it would take one man, a brash, ambitious photographer from London's East End, to see her true potential and ignite the spark that would set the decade on fire. She was just 18 when she met him on a shoot for Vogue. He introduced himself simply as Bailey. David Bailey was 5 years her senior, a larger-than-life character with a raw energy that was the antithesis of the stuffy establishment. "We were instantly attracted to each other," Shrimpton confessed. She broke off her relationship. He ended his marriage. Together, they became the emblematic couple of swinging London.
When I was first with Bailey, it was very great fun. We was very much in love and everything was opening up for us, really. So it was a fairly magical time.
Their breakthrough moment came in 1962. British Vogue sent them to New York for a shoot titled The Young Idea. The fashion editor was nervous about Bailey's insistence on bringing this unknown, unproven girl with him, but Bailey refused to back down. Jean was coming, or he wasn't going at all. What happened next changed fashion forever. Instead of posing elegantly in front of the Statue of Liberty, Bailey took Shrimpton to the gritty streets of Manhattan. They shot in Harlem, in Chinatown, in rundown shooting galleries. The images were raw, spontaneous, and utterly modern. They captured a sense of life and movement that was a world away from the stiff, posed glamour of the 1950s. Bailey's philosophy was simple. He wanted realism. The photos weren't just about the clothes, they were about the girl in the clothes. And that girl was Jean. Her natural, almost melancholic presence grounded the images in a new kind of authenticity. It was the birth of kitchen sink fashion photography. The American fashion world was stunned. The images took the world by storm, and in doing so, launched not just two careers, but an entire cultural movement. The Swinging Sixties had found their look. Bailey later said of Shrimpton, "She was magic. In a way, she was the cheapest model in the world. You only needed to shoot half a roll of film, and then you had it." But there was a darker side to their partnership. While Bailey negotiated lucrative contracts and retained rights to the images that would make him a fortune, Jean showed up, posed, and collected her day rate. She was his muse, his inspiration. But she was also his product. It was a dynamic that would define her entire career. Everyone around her profited from her image, while she remained, in many ways, powerless. Their affair fueled the creative fire, but it was volatile and intense. Bailey was shrewd and ambitious, and as Shrimpton later reflected, "He made a lot of money out of me." The romance didn't last, but the revolution they started was only just beginning. By 1965, Jean Shrimpton was the most famous model in the world. She was the face of the youthquake, appearing on countless covers of Vogue, Harper's Bazaar, and even Time magazine. That year, she was hired by the chemical company DuPont to be a judge at the Melbourne Cup in Australia, a trip designed to promote their new fabric, Orlon. It was an event that would go down in fashion history, but for all the wrong reasons. On Derby Day, Shrimpton arrived at the ultra-conservative Flemington racecourse, and a silence fell over the crowd. Then came the gasps. In an era where women didn't leave the house without a hat and gloves, Jean Shrimpton wore neither. But that wasn't the scandal. The scandal was her dress. Made by her London dressmaker, who hadn't been sent enough fabric, the simple white shift ended a shocking 4 inches above her knees. It was, arguably, the world's first public outing of the miniskirt.
And all of a sudden, literally everybody stopped talking.
There were angry women looking at Jean Shrimpton. Their faces were like that.
The fact that she didn't have a hat, she may as well have walked butt naked.
The Australian press went into a frenzy. One newspaper screamed, "There she was, the world's highest-paid model, snubbing the ironclad conventions at fashionable Flemington. No hat, no gloves, and no stockings." For the first time since 1861, the winning horse was knocked off the front pages in favor of a model's legs. Shrimpton herself was blindsided. She later recalled, "I was surrounded by cameramen, all on their knees like proposing Victorian swains, shooting upwards to make my skirt look even shorter. I had no idea this was going to happen. It was publicity she never planned, but its impact was global." The incident is now credited as the pivotal moment that introduced the miniskirt to the international stage. The dress didn't just break the rules, it rewrote them. In 1965, it was Jean Shrimpton's legs that famously stopped a nation, and in doing so, pushed the fashion revolution forward. The Melbourne incident only amplified her fame. She was now, indisputably, the world's first supermodel. But as her star rose, she felt an increasing sense of disillusionment. She loathed the nickname the press had given her, the Shrimp, and hated the lack of control over her own life.
People who want to be successful and are successful are neurotic. I mean, I had this neurosis which could be exploited because that almost anyone who's successful is neurotic and needy. You might, if you're lucky, grow out of it. I think I have.
That exploitation continued in her personal life. After Bailey, she began a 3-year affair with actor Terence Stamp. They were London's most beautiful couple, but for Jean, it was hollow. He never gave her a key to their apartment. He dismissed her acting ambitions, telling a journalist she had more chance of becoming a brain surgeon. But the real betrayal came later. Stamp had been organizing promotional work for her, appearances, endorsements, the kind of work that came with her fame. What Jean didn't know was that he was taking 10% of her earnings without telling her. When she discovered it, the relationship was over. Years later, Stamp would claim he'd planned to surprise her with a lump sum. But for Jean, it was another reminder that even the people closest to her saw her as something to profit from, not someone to protect. The glamour was a golden cage. She was adored by millions, but felt increasingly unheard. And despite being the most famous model in the world, she had little to show for it financially. Image rights didn't exist in the 1960s. Photographers like Bailey built fortunes on her face, while she earned day rates and struggled to pay rent between bookings. And so, in her early 30s, Jean Shrimpton did the unthinkable. At the very peak of her career, she quit. She forsook the world of high fashion, turned her back on the fame and the money, and simply vanished from public life. She moved to the wild, windswept coast of Cornwall, a world away from swinging London. There, she opened an antique shop, and later, with her husband, Michael Cox, bought the Abbey, a historic hotel in Penzance overlooking the sea. This became her sanctuary. Her wedding reception was held there, not with a crowd of celebrities, but with just 2 witnesses, followed by champagne and fish and chips. For over 40 years, she ran the hotel, a life of quiet, hands-on work. She raised her son, Thaddeus, and embraced anonymity. She became, in her own words, reticent to the point of reclusive. When a ghost-written autobiography was published in 1990, she was blunt about her reasons. "I needed some money to renovate to the roof of the hotel. I didn't want the book to appear. I've hated publicity all my life." In 2023, at the age of 81, she and her husband finally put the hotel up for sale, ready to fully retire. She had successfully built a life completely disconnected from the one that had made her famous. She described herself as a melancholy soul and admitted, "I sometimes feel I'm damaged goods." But she found a sense of peace in Cornwall, a place she called a world out of time. Jean Shrimpton's story is the ultimate fashion paradox. She was the girl whose face defined a decade, a symbol of freedom and modernity, who felt utterly trapped. She was the world's first supermodel, who never actually wanted to be a model. Today, Jean Shrimpton is credited with revolutionizing not just fashion photography, but the very concept of what a model could be. Before her, models were mannequins, elegant, untouchable, aristocratic. After her, they were real. They had personality, emotion, vulnerability. She paved the way for every supermodel who came after, from Twiggy to Kate Moss. The irony, of course, is that she did it all while wishing she could be anywhere else.
There weren't many girls trying to come into it. I mean, the girls today are much more beautiful, I think. The standards are much, much higher. Models today are stunning compared to us. We were just I think we were a nicer bunch then, because we were more innocent.
Her legacy isn't just in the photographs or the magazine covers. It's in her radical choice to walk away. In an industry that sells the fantasy of a perfect life, Jean Shrimpton's untold story is a quiet reminder that the most profound luxury is the freedom to choose your own. So what is her true legacy? The revolution she started in fashion, or the quiet rebellion of her escape? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.